Hey, everybody, listen up and pay no attention to what's going on behind me. Okay, we can talk about that another time. I'm Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, and you're listening to Heavy Consequence on Consequence of Sound.
Hey, Dee.
Consequence of Sound.
How are you?
On?
How you doing?
I am doing very well, all things considered.
Yep.
So thank you for asking. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in there. Hanging in there. I'm in New York. We had a rough go of it for a while, but New York's kind of on the.
Oh yes, I know well. My family still lives in New York, and and my grandchildren for that matter. So we were paying very close attention. In LA, my children are in LA now. So and we've escaped to our house in Belize on the beach, which is awesome, and it's COVID-free here, but not without serious effort on the part of the government with mandatory masks, $5,000 fine, first offense without jail, imprisonment, second offense. They really just brought the hammer down and locked down the borders. So we got a lot of restrictions in order to be COVID-free. But at the same time, so we're dealing with the effects of COVID without the COVID being here. So that said, for the love of metal live, baby.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the live album, but first, knowing that I was going to speak to you, I went back and I watched the Twisted Sister documentary over the weekend. Loved it again, but I hadn't seen it in a little while, and it still amazes me like how many years and how many shows you guys put in before getting that record deal, and then even before you joined the band, JJ, years before that. And I wanted to know from someone like you who just put all that work in, when you see like artists like on TikTok and YouTube and they have like one viral video and all of a sudden they have a record deal, for someone like you who put in so many shows and so many years, do you kind of like shake your head and think back on like how much work you put in to get to that level?
Well, this brings me to a conversation I had with the late Kevin Dubrow back in the 80s. Quiet Riot were very much like Twisted Sister in that they were together for quite a long time, slogging it out. A couple of Japanese albums in the club scene, and they were there, doing it when others were not. They were one of the bands around the scene out there. While we were out on the East Coast, they were on the West. And I had dinner with Dubrow, and he said, "Don't you hate the fact that Motley Crue and Rat and all these bands, they put together the band, they're together like a year, and then they get a deal, and then they're like on stage at Madison Square Garden. Doesn't that piss you off?" And I looked at him and I said, "No." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "Kevin, I wouldn't wish what I've been through on my worst enemy." And that's the truth. It's supposed to be joyful. The dream is we're going to put a band together and they're going to discover us and we're going to be rock stars. That's the dream. The dream isn't we're going to put a band together and then we're going to suffer for 10 years until somebody finally gives us a chance. I don't say suffer because we were playing, but still it was endless and relentless. And honestly, by the time, and this isn't whining and complaining, this is just a fact, the joy had been beaten out of me. I was so hate-filled by the time we made it, I didn't find pleasure in anything. I mean, Twisted had played in front of tens of thousands of people before we had a record out. So like, what was the big deal? We had recorded our demo with Eddie Kramer, I'll Never Grow Up Now, Under the Blade, at Electric Lady Studios. The Stones were there. Cars were there. I remember Ronnie Spector walking and Mick Jagger dancing through the studio. So big whip. We were now in the studio in England. We were in Electric Lady in 1978. So we had done it and still not broken. And so joy was stolen. So in answer to your question, have fun, TikTok video people. Knock yourself out. Enjoy your moment, and God love you, because that's really what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be silly and fun, and a dream comes true, quite honestly.
Well, I mean, on that note, obviously, this pandemic is taking a toll on the music industry. Bands can't tour right now. And you know what that struggle is like to make it. But what about these younger bands or bands just, nowadays with record sales down and bands are just making most of their living on the road. Can you talk about that mental and that economic toll that's taking on, that bands are experiencing now, and maybe the fear that a lot of artists are having about their future right now?
This is very important to talk about because most people don't think, I don't think they want to go down that rabbit hole. The potential for the destruction of independent art in total, records, film, concert, anything independent, anything from, I'm talking about small restaurants, anything from any kind of startup where people are funding and fighting their way to do it on their own, trying to make it, is in danger of being obliterated. I'm now very active in the film world. I was supposed to be directing my first feature film in May, low budget independent film. Now, first of all, they haven't figured out how to get back to the set yet. They're working, the unions are working on that. But then another problem's arisen. No one wants to insure the movies. The only people who can afford to make movies are the mega corporations, Netflix, Universal. So what are going to potentially happen, is the destruction of all independent film, all independent recordings, all independent non whatever the companies, Clear Channel, theaters and arenas, all those little concert halls that are paying their bills week to week, month to month. They're in danger of closing, collapsing, and disappearing. So what are we left with? The corporate, the corporate world thinks we should watch, thinks we should see. This is a really grave danger. And I don't think rock and roll will ever die. It will thrive and survive if it has to be in basements and garages and bedrooms. That much will always be there. But will the people be able to get indie music, indie art anymore if things keep going the way they're going? Very terrifying.
Yeah, and Sammy Hagar recently made headlines. I don't know if you saw that. He said, I'd rather get sick and even die in order to resume touring and get the concert industry going for the economy, than not tour for years to come or months and months to come. He later kind of explained it, but he still kind of stuck to his point that he wants to get the economy going again. I was wondering about your thoughts on that, just like where, that kind of divide between getting the economy going, getting concerts going, but the public safety of fans.
First of all, I mean, and I love Sammy and I understand what he's saying, but we all can say that until we're in the trenches and we're sick and dying. Then it doesn't seem like such a good idea. So when we're healthy and, and we're tough and we're, it's easy to, but when you're getting sick, you might have, and dying, but it's beyond that. Recently, there was a bunch of shows. I had no shows scheduled this year, so I could focus on my writing. I finished a novel, working on a couple of screenplays. I told you I'm directing now a second movie that I'm going to be directing after this first one, once we get things going again. But there's a thing called the Kings of Chaos. Matt Sorum is an all-star band that does shows, and it's a rotating group. But we had about a dozen shows we were supposed to do this summer, spring and summer, and they've all been postponed and canceled because of COVID. But then we had a realization that it's actually supposed to be in a couple of weeks. One of the shows didn't cancel. And it was at a casino in Northern Oregon. They wanted to do it. And we were looking at each other going, whoa, what? They didn't cancel? Like, we just sort of assumed it was canceled. Now it's a gig, and now we're all talking. All right, well, we got to rehearse. How are we going to rehearse? And how are we going to get together? How are we going to get there? And then beyond figuring out our own, okay, well, no meet and greet, and they're going to put a barrier up and keep the audience back. And then someone, I think it might have been Sebastian, who said, what about the people? We're creating an event that people are going to, well, they expect them to come. And we know a lot of people are not following, especially once they start drinking, through with the protocols. Or do we want to be the cause of that gathering? And Dee, your favorite thing is have people yelling "rock" at the top of their lungs and just spraying all over each other's faces and heads. We're safe because there's a barrier and a distance between us, but are we going to be those guys? You know, and then there's a discussion, well, is it really that bad? And then it's spiking. And then finally we said, you know what? As much as we want to play, as much as we want to entertain, as much as we like to get the money for doing it, we're not ready to cross that line and be the ones responsible for that irresponsibility.
And obviously there's a divide, you know, with President Trump's response to the whole pandemic. You obviously have a history with him, you know, with Celebrity Apprentice. Originally he was using "we're not going to take it," and then you told him to stop, and you've now spoken out against his policies. I know you started out on a friendly basis with him. What's your thoughts on his particular response to the pandemic and his administration's response?
I've said before, and people, you know, react strongly when I say it, and I don't give a shit because I'm a true patriot and not some commie-loving, you know, convenient patriot. And anybody who doesn't see that is not a patriot. You know, we've been at each other's throats. The country's been split in two over so many different things. Political divide's been massive. And with perspective is where you're supposed to say, you know what, we can argue about these other things and disagree, but this is affecting and hurting all of us. We need to come together and fight this as one people, as Americans have done throughout history. Yet the president's response, the White House response has been to politicize it and separate us more and make it about politics instead of about joining together and helping each other. So this was an opportunity to really bring the country together over something really important that just rises above all the other BS in the world. And he failed to do that. And we're seeing the results. I live in Belize now, and Belize is a little country and we're COVID free. Belize they shut the borders. They made wearing a mask mandatory, $5,000 fine, first offense, prison for real, second offense. Military police, curfews, military police on the streets. If you're on the streets, you go to jail. Arresting people on the streets if you stay out past curfew. As a result, we have no COVID. Okay, and you know what? Everybody, you have to make the punishment strong, but people are following it, and we have no COVID. We're not in fear for our lives. This situation required a powerful effort from the governing bodies, and they failed to deliver it.
Thank you for that. And let's get to the live album, obviously coming out in July, end of July. And it's called For the Love of Metal Live. And it's got the solo stuff, the Twisted Sister stuff. And I think it's actually an interesting time to release a live album because people, for the most part, can't go to shows right now. So you're kind of giving them this kind of in-home experience, maybe filling that void. And obviously it wasn't planned that way, but can you talk about, you know, releasing it during that time and what fans can expect from this release?
Yeah. Well, my management thinks I'm Nostradamus now, and I'm telling you I am not, because in spring of 2019, I informed them that I was taking off from live performing 2020 so I could focus on my writing. I didn't know the world was going to be taking off 2020. And be careful what you wish for, because I've been locked in my house and all I do is write. I've written a novel, 2 screenplays, I'm starting another novel. I have nothing to do but write. So and then they said, well, you know, what are we going to do? You know, you've just got some momentum going with For the Love of Metal. You've found a place in the metal community with Dee Snider, for Dee Snider as an artist, which I've been trying for decades. And I said, well, let's film the live shows this summer and release a live album. And it turned out to be a very fortuitous thing, since there's no concerts and you can't, and putting together a live album is not just something you do in a couple of weeks or a month. You won't be seeing a deluge of live entertainment like this because it takes planning and preparation. So we've been working on this since the end of last year. And it's coming out in July. And like you said, there's no concerts experiences. And here is the best of it. It's about 9 different live concerts crushed together into one experience. I mean, and it's very unique in that in one sentence, one line of the song, it goes from Brazil to England, day to night, rain to sun, in one line. So we cut, and I wanted to show the universality of metal and how the music connects us all over the world. As separated as we think we are, metal is the same metal being listened to in Russia and in South America and in the United States and in Europe. We're all sharing the same music and we all love the same music. We are more one than we are separate. So, so now people, I'm telling you, get the Blu-ray, get your big screen TV, bring in some friends and family who you know aren't sick and aren't going to infect you. Get some beers or whatever it is you like to imbibe. I'm a coffee junkie, and rock out with you. You know what's out. Yeah. You know, because and remember last summer, like it was, you know, let's party like it's 2019.
And it has the one new song on it as well, "Prove Me Wrong." And I just wanted to hear more about that track, both musically and lyrically.
Well, you know, record companies are always looking for ways to entice people to buy the product rather than just download it. So they're always try to load them up, you know, with all these little extras. And they said, "Do you have any outtakes from For the Love of Metal?" We did not. So I said, well, we could write a new song and record it. And they were like, really? That would be awesome. So the message, besides lyrically, the message, I'll tell you that in a second, but the song itself is a message from me to the community saying, this is Dee Snider. This is what I sound like, and this is what you can expect moving forward. This isn't an outtake from the last album. This is a new song that you may or may not hear on the next album because we may not need it, but this is what you can expect. Lyrically, it's just, I had a moment recently that reminded me that I've been fighting an uphill battle my entire freaking life. Everything I've ever tried to do, and I'm not alone here. A lot of people feel this way, and you know what? You are. It's not, for most of us, it doesn't come easy. You know, occasionally those TikTok people get a freebie, but for most of us, it's a fight no matter what we're doing. And I decided I was going to write my first novel. I've been writing screenplays. I wrote my own memoirs. I've been developing myself as a writer for some time, and I felt I was ready to write a fiction novel. And I wrote a few chapters. And one of the people I sent it to get a little feedback was a literary agent. And he emailed me and said, Dee, let the writers do the writing, stick to rock and roll. That was all I needed to hear. Because my whole life I've been hearing those words, you can't. Know your place. And I not only have I finished the novel, 56,000 words, it's out of publishers, I promise you it will be published. And I promise you people will get it. And the first copy is going to go to that guy and it's going to say, F you. F you, thanks for the inspiration. Because it's like, people have constantly challenged me to prove myself. And I said, no, I'm not going to prove myself. You prove that I'm wrong about me being a singer, me being an entertainer, me being now I'm going to direct my first movie. People, you've never directed before. That doesn't mean I can't do it. So prove me wrong is just that sort of a statement about 50 years of fighting the good fight, believing in myself when others didn't believe in me, and just challenging people to knock me off that stage.